This week's topic is preparing for year end and pipeline. And we wanted to have this webinar just to make sure that you're aware of what needs to be in the system before a year end, how to extract the information from the system, and utilize it so that you get exactly what you need. All right, so let's hop over to pipeline. All right, there are kind of two different types of customers that I wanted to go over today, or two different types of accounts. There are those who do have the commission module, and there are those who don't. And so I'm going to kind of address those two different areas. So for people who don't have the commission module, first I want to talk about what you need to have in the system before year end. Obviously, you want to make sure any transactions that close during the year are in the system. That you've set them with a status that's a closed status, and that they've got a closed date. That way, when you run any reports or extract any downloads, it reflects all of the transactions for that closed in that year. Okay, so let's head over to see how you actually extract that information. So I'm going to head over to transactions here. And what you generally want to do to extract the information that you need for the year is run one of your spreadsheet downloads. And we recommend running the full spreadsheet because it's going to include all your transactions. Versus if you run the 2018 or the 2019, it's going to only include transactions that were added during that period. So rather than being unsure about when a transaction was added, just go ahead and pull them all. That way, once you've downloaded the full spreadsheet and have all the transactions, then you can sort and filter to find those that are closed in that period, in the period that you want to search for, okay? So let's go ahead and download a full spreadsheet here. And then we'll go ahead and save that and open it. Okay, so I've got my full spreadsheet here. And I just wanted to show a really real quickly a couple of sort and filter options that you've got, because generally once you get this in Excel, you're going to need to manipulate it at least a little bit. Again, typically filtering and sorting are the top two things that you would do. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what further you would do once you've downloaded it and opened it in a spreadsheet application. I highly recommend that you watch our Spreadsheet Superpowers for Your Pipeline Reports webinar that we had a few months back. And it's under our it's on our article that's got all of our Pipeline Pro webinar recordings. So if you go there and search for recording, you'll find it. But again, head on down to that Spreadsheet Superpowers for Your Pipeline Reports. We talk about macros and filtering and totaling and everything. So it's really helpful if you need any help there. But again, just wanted to real quickly go over just sorting and filtering and sorting. So let's say I've downloaded this report, I've got all of my data. I really want to look at everything that was closed during the year so I can actually sort if I wanted to. So let's say I click anywhere in my spreadsheet here, then go to data, which is where my sort is, and then sort. And Excel's super smart, so it knows what my column headers are, even though they're not the first row there. So let's say I wanted to sort based on status, right? So I can see all of my closed there in a group, right? All of those. And there are plenty of those. I can scroll down. Sorting is helpful when I want to eyeball something. Like I mentioned, there are quite a few closed here, so I probably want to actually filter so I can get a little more accurate count at the bottom of what I've got here. So instead of going to sort, what I would do is just go to filter, right? And once I do that, it's going to add these little arrows at the top of each of my columns. And then, so here I would come here, and since I only want closed, I'll deselect all of those and then say only closed, or maybe I want all of these closed categories there, right? And that'll filter for me there. And then of course I can come down, and again, you can watch that video to see how to do totals, etc. Alrighty, so different options that you've got there, sorting and filtering. Again, check out that video for more advanced functions that you can do. Alrighty, so downloading your spreadsheet is typically the way that you extract data when you don't have the commission module. When you do have the commission module, you do still want to make sure that you've got all of your transactions that closed during the year in the system, that they've got a closed status, and that they've got a closed date, and also that you've generated a CDA for them, right? That way when you pull the reports, it will reflect all of that information. And generally, when you've got the commission module to extract your data, you're going to head over to reports, And generally, if you're trying to get, let's say, issue your 1099s, you're going to run your agent income report for each of those agents, right? Run agent, or you can look at your agent production report to get more of a summary of the information. And sometimes you may want to look at more of your broker stats and totals, and you can run your commissions and closings report for that. But again, make sure everything's closed and CDA'd before you actually run those. All right. Also, just FYI, just because we hear sometimes that agents want to know their commissions and may not realize that they can actually, from their personal profile, any agent can, from their personal profile, come over here and click your commissions and run their own commissions reports. All right. Next, I wanted to let you know that if you are on transactions, and let's say usually around December-ish, we start being able to extract the contacts from the system because they want to do a holiday mailing typically, right? So just FYI that from the transactions page, you can click all contacts and download all of your contacts in the system, right? Often people will want to send them to the buyers or sellers. And in that case, you just want to be sure that you've been adding your buyers and sellers as contacts on the transactions. That way, when you do that download, they're included. And then once you've downloaded it, similar to how we sorted and filtered before, you can then sort and filter based on the role, specifically looking for those buyer or seller roles. Okay. And then the last couple of things are just a couple of housekeeping that are good to do toward the end of the year. Let me head on over to admin settings here. One is if you use your, I'm going to go to checklist real quick. If you use business days, when you're setting up your, I'm on a checklist here, when you're setting up your relative due dates, in other words, you've got any relative due dates in your checklist that are based on business days rather than calendar days, then you want to be sure that you update your business holidays for the upcoming year, right? So for 2020, I can go add any business holidays that I've got for the year, okay? Because those business days for relative due dates are based on these holidays as well as weekends, okay? And then lastly, we recommend heading over here to company settings just to make sure there's not something that you want to update. For example, the transaction name instructions. Maybe regularly you're seeing a particular error or something that you don't like in the way that people are naming the transactions, and you want to sort of tweak these instructions to make sure that doesn't happen. Or maybe you want to update your defaults in the more info and admin info fields so that when new transactions are created, they come with this more updated or appropriate information if those need to be updated. Okay. Likewise, under document names, we recommend just taking a look to make sure there aren't any new document names that you need to add. You probably would have been alerted that you needed to do that before now, if that's the case, because there would be docs being named in ways that you didn't want, and you've probably already updated them. But again, just take a gander, see if there's anything that you want to update here, because it helps both you and whoever's naming docs when these are up to date. And then lastly, just lead sources. If there are any new lead sources or advertising that you've done that you want to be reflected when transactions are created, you could add those here. All right. And that is it for preparing for year-end activities.